What's going on, traders? Happy Monday. I hope you guys all had a good weekend. As usual, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know exactly how my trading went today, so let's get right into today's recap. And as you guys can see from the screen, unfortunately today I did have a pretty decent red day. I was down about $60 on SQQQ and $70 on TQQQ, so down about $130 on the day. And I do use $10,000, so that is about a 1.3% loss. And right, in terms of what my actual daily goal to profit every day is 1%. So I definitely gave back a lot more than I should have, and I had definitely really poor risk management. And the other thing that I did really bad that lots of beginner traders make, so I'm definitely making this mistake even to this day, and that's over trading. As you guys can see, I had over 600 orders, so that's like the most I've ever had, I think, and that's just ridiculous. So I wasn't even trading the whole time the stock market was open, so that just goes to show how much I was actually over trading. So I started trading right at market open, right, as you guys can see, right 6:31 is when I started trading, and I didn't stop trading until 10:51. So wasn't even trading for that long, so definitely no excuses for this amount of orders. And so let me just go ahead and explain to you guys exactly where I struggled. And so as you guys can see, the market ended up pushing up very aggressively today, and then it ended up peaking out, right, consolidating, and then selling off. And so in hindsight, this looks really nice and easy, but it's a lot harder, when you're in the moment, to know which way direction's headed. And so where I really struggled today was as the Nasdaq started to push up right on market open, right? As you guys can see, right at 6:30, this thing starts to push up, and I started getting to TQQQ, and right, I'm getting into these candles, right, adding as it's pushing up, but it ends up getting rejected hard, and so I ended up giving back profit and going red on the day. And then as this thing starts to aggressively sell off and form these lower highs and lower lows, I believe I started again to SQQQ, but this thing ended up changing direction, right? So I was all over the place in terms of being so quick to just get into a position rather than letting direction actually form, right? And so this thing ended up faking me out a bit more. And what ended up happening, this thing ends up pushing up. So I start going with TQQQ, and I start actually making back what I lost, and I entered the green. And once this thing starts the trade sideways, right, before it ultimately formed higher highs, right, and just formed a higher low, I was just too focused on getting in very rapidly, and so I would just switch up direction very quickly. So as this thing would break below EMA, I'd get into SQQQ, only for this thing to break above, that for me to think it's time for TQQQ, right? So today where I definitely struggled with was over trading, and me just trying to predict the bottom of everything, right? I should have just, once direction was unclear and I lost money maybe a few times at most, right, I should have just walked away and waited for this thing to really just start to form these nice green candles, right, rather than having this period of time where it breaks above the EMA only for it to break back below it. So it's just a waste of time for me to really just be trading during moments like this, and I really need to capitalize when it really starts to rally, right? So it would push up, consolidate, right, but I would just be too focused on the small movements, and I should have just focused more bigger picture, right, only for this thing to continue to uptrend, right, pretty nicely on the day. And so I was red on TQQQ even with this thing pushing up as much as it did, and ultimately it did end up selling off. So that sucked to see, but I should have just taken a step back on the bigger picture too, right, and seen how overbought this thing was, right? We did hit lows right down here on the 6th, and so now that it is the 9th and we were trading all the way up here, right, this thing did typically tend to get rejected around this area. So I should have definitely been more aware that there could have been potential for a pullback. And so that was just definitely just lots of mistakes overall on my end, but I hope you guys were able to pick up on where I really messed up on, and where I really should have focused on capitalizing, right, more on the movements where there's lots of green candles, lots of volume, right, and stop trading on areas where I get burned a few times, right, where it's not as clear, right? If I just focused on these pushes rather than trying to trade every single little part, right? Trying to get into SQQQ, trying to predict where it's gonna, fall to, and then end up getting on the wrong side of things. I was just really digging myself in a hole, right? And so where would I have thought it would have been a good idea in hindsight to cut it? Well, once this thing's aggressively pushing up, you guys start to realize that there's a nice resistance that forms around this area, right? Right around this area. And so every time it approaches this area, it would tend to get rejected, and it wasn't forming these higher highs, right? If this thing was continuously pushing up, and it would just form higher highs, and it would just continue, right, to just push up all the way up here. But it doesn't do that, right? It ends up trading sideways and starting to form lower highs, and it ends up aggressively selling off, right? Once it aggressively sold off and started to consolidate, right? So this area, probably not the best area to trade, but if you're trying to short the market, then this would have been a perfect time to do it, right? Not this area where it's very unclear, but more when there's lots of red candles. So there was lots of money to be made on the way up and on the way down, and so it sucks that I just really messed up on, an opportunity like today, and so unfortunately I'm just gonna have to, try to implement better practices heading into the rest of the week. And so that's pretty much everything that I have to talk about today. As far as where I think the market's headed, obviously we are, experiencing a very big pullback, but we were very overbought and overextended, so it's not too surprising in my opinion. But, that doesn't mean we're going to end up having to sell off all the way. That is a possibility that we break below the EMA and continue to sell off, because almost every time we've broken above the EMA, it hasn't been good news for the market overall. So we were overextended. We could continue to sell off, but at the same time, right, we have been seeing this area as a really nice support. So we just have to see, where, the market starts to head. But I'm excited to follow up with everything. As you guys can see, my other swing trades, right, did end up making me some money on the day. Tesla was my biggest winner today, so it did have a nice push on the day, and so it was able to make back some of the loss that I unfortunately did have today. But I'm just excited to continue trading the rest of the week and see, what I ended up doing. But other than that, I hope you guys all have been having an amazing day, and I'll look forward to the rest of the trading week as well. But I will be posting a recap as well. And other than that, if you guys have any questions, you guys can go ahead and drop a comment. If you want me to break down any stock for you, you guys can go ahead and drop a comment, and I will do that as well. But that's pretty much everything. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a nice day.